Do you or do you not feel bonita?
I feel bonita.
Wonderful, because you look bonita.
Hello, my debaucherous darlings, and welcome back to the Goth Attack. So this week, I want to upgrade a small part of my apartment, but this small part is a source of great irritation for me, my pantry. This honestly might be the worst pantry ever. It is the absolute dumbest design I've ever seen. It's a total waste of space. And I'm going to tell you the 10 things that I hate about my pantry. First and foremost, the doors don't open all the way. This door literally is blocked by the fridge. And this is absolutely insane to me because you can just buy an appropriately sized fridge and it wouldn't have been an issue. So I don't know why this is like this, but it is an absolute irritation because it allows me to struggle every time I have to access the pantry. There's no lighting in here, so everything is always dark. There's no usable shelving in my pantry. I ended up having to toss in this IKEA shelving unit that I had and I was previously using for my plants because it is just an open space with absolutely no shelving that is useful. I also hate that the doors are really ugly. It feels like it's these laundry door louvers, which look really strange in my kitchen space. This space is actually really strangely shallow, and so it makes it difficult for me to store a lot of stuff in here, and I have to be really clever about how and what I put in here. And that is also combined with the fact that this is essentially the only utility closet in my space, and so it makes it really hard to be able to store all the brooms and vacuums and all my pantry items and all the things that I would need to store in my apartment because I don't have a separate space that I can use for the utility stuff as well. Another frustrating thing is this is a New England home, and so everything is sort of sloped, and so the doors will frequently just creep open, and the only way to keep them closed is this very weird, strange little latch that is a pain to latch and unlatch, so I never actually use it. It's also a pain that there's no outlet nearby, and so there's no place to charge my vacuum, and so I have to leave my vacuum out in the kitchen in another space because I can't put it here. There's nowhere to charge it. It's also the dumbest shape. This pantry goes extremely far back. It's just shallow and really long and goes all the way back to the outside of the house, which makes all that space unusable for me. I can't access it. It's so deep and so difficult to use. The only two shelves in this whole pantry are in this very weird, shallow, way back corner of this pantry, and this one is up very high and I'm very short, and so this is functionally a useless space for me. This pantry is the absolute bane of my existence, particularly because of the shape of it, because so much of it is in this really deep portion of the closet that I can't get access to. It's functionally useless space for me. And if this was my home and I owned it, I would probably wall that whole thing off and then bust through the wall on the other side in the room behind this and make it into a cute hutch or a closet for that room, because then the space would actually be more usable, and then the pantry would basically only be what I can actually access right here anyways. But I'm a renter, so I can't do any of that, so I'm going to do a couple simple upgrades. Oh, you sweet baby fool. But really though, this project was a bit more complicated than I was anticipating because New England homes are really cattywampus. Now I will say a lot of these things might not be necessarily renter friendly depending on what is in your lease agreement. I have a really good relationship with my landlord, and he trusts me to make improvements as long as I'm communicating about them. And so I did get approval to make these changes beforehand. And this is something that's worth considering if you are a renter. Sometimes if you just ask your landlord to paint or to make simple upgrades, a lot of times they're willing to let you do that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to install adjustable wall-mounted shelving in this pantry. And this is going to be really useful for me because it's going to add more shelving, which I desperately need, and it's going to allow me to keep things off the floor. Right now, because this unit has to stand on the floor, it's really hard to get in here and clean. I essentially have to pull everything out of the pantry every single time I want to clean the floor. And so having everything wall mounted is going to make it so that I only have to remove anything that's sitting on the floor to be able to clean it. And this is going to make my life much easier. And because it's adjustable, it's going to allow me to change the size and placement of where the shelves lie so that I can fit things in more logically for my pantry. And this is a really great future-proofing method too, because anybody who ever is in this space is going to be able to easily adjust where the shelves lie to accommodate what they store in their pantry. The second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to be replacing these doors with a single door that's on sliding barn door hardware. And so the new door is just going to slide back behind my hutch and out of the way. And this is going to be great because it'll move completely out of the way and I'll be able to get at the whole opening of this pantry and not have to worry about the door smashing into the fridge and limiting my ability to actually use this space. I'm also going to be making the new door really unique with a bespoke stained glass inspired design. And this is actually going to be a really fun and interesting and also renter friendly hack to make this door more of a statement moment in this space. So definitely stay tuned later in the video for that trick. And then finally, I'm going to add some accoutrement to make this even better for me. I'm going to add motion censored lights. I'm going to be adding organizers into this space, some holders for my mops and brooms. I'm going to figure out a way to be able to put my vacuum in here and charge it, which is really important for me so I can get it out of the space and hidden behind closed doors. And I also have a neat dollar store trick that I think is going to help me make these weird, really deep, unusable shelves slightly more usable. But the first part of this process is going to be removing everything out of the pantry and getting it clean so we can get started. So let's get going. Okay, now that the pantry has been cleared out, I can actually start getting to work on getting the wall-mounted shelves in, and I can go ahead and remove these doors to make it easier on myself. The big thing with the wall-mounted shelving is you just want to make sure that you're screwing into the studs to make sure that everything is going to be structurally sound. I use this sort of stud finder. It's a magnetic stud finder, and these are really great because what they do is they just use a magnet to find the screws in the drywall, which is essentially where the drywall is screwed into the stud. And so it's a really great way and a really cheap way to find where the studs are in your space. I find that the electric ones are not always as reliable, and this one is super reliable and they're much cheaper. So I will pop a link in the description if you want to pick one of these up. They are awesome. And so I'm gonna take off the doors and I'm gonna get the rails hung. Bye, doors. So I got the rail system in the closet, and this is actually a really easy system. You essentially just find your studs and you screw the rails into the studs. It has little holes already in the rail system so you can just screw through. You want to make sure when you're doing this that you are finding a stud, because what you put in a pantry can get pretty heavy. And I also recommend using a big level to make sure that everything is nice and level sometimes in old houses, things that are actually level don't look level because the rest of the house isn't always level. And so, especially for shelving and things where level actually matters, I would recommend using a level for something like this. These are also really great because they're super adjustable and you can move all the shelves around. And this kind of makes it a future-proof sort of situation where if I want to get more shelves, I can always get more shelves and brackets. If I need to change the spacing, I can always do that. And so I really like this system, and I will make sure to link it below for you guys. So the next step that I'm going to do is I'm going to be installing the rail hardware that goes with the barn door assembly, and this should be pretty easy. Okay, so this is the part of the project that started to get really frustratingly complicated. So what ended up happening here was when I was planning this whole project, I had measured out everything in this space to make sure that the barn door hardware would fit. There is a clearance required so that the door can slide where it needs to slide, and I had measured for this. And when I had done the measurements of where it was going to intersect past the fridge, I took the measurements at the top because that's what I could gain access to because the old pantry door was in the way blocking. And a lot of this issue stems from the fact that this fridge is wildly oversized for this space. You have typically two types of refrigerator sizes, what's called standard size, which this is a standard size fridge, but this space is designed for a counter size fridge, which is a bit more of a shallow depth, and I'll put pictures in so you guys can see what I mean. It extends really far out past the cabinetry, and this creates an issue because the fridge is extending past the trim of the door, which you don't want. Your trim should be completely clear of anything sitting in front of it because that's the clearance required for doors to work. And so as I was doing this and I removed the old door, I realized that there's a pretty significant differential between the gap at the top and the gap at the bottom because of how much the floor slopes. And this is unfortunately a common thing for New England winters. And so I knew at that moment that the barn door would end up sliding and touching the fridge when it goes to close and not being able to completely close all the way to the frame, because although it will clear at the top, it can't clear at this bottom because the bottom is too small. So I had a frustration moment because I was already halfway through this project at this point and everything had already been purchased, the door had already been started, and so I had a bit of a panic moment and I sat down and caught my breath and worked through it. I spoke with my landlord and we came across the consensus that it still made sense to fix this pantry and use the barn door and do it correctly, because the reality is this is a rental. This fridge is not the right solution for this space, and eventually this appliance will need to be replaced. It is the lifespan of all appliances that eventually they go and you have to replace them. And so I worked with the landlord and he agreed that I would make this correct with the understanding that when this fridge eventually dies, he's going to pick up the correct size fridge, which is going to be a more shallow depth, which means the face of the fridge is going to be past where the trim is, which means that the door will eventually close the way it's supposed to close. And so it creates a frustrating moment for me because it doesn't technically correct the issue that I had with the door originally. There's still going to be an intersection between these two things. However, it is less annoying for me because what this means is if I want to access the fridge, I just slide the pantry door open slightly, or I just keep it slightly ajar when I'm doing lots of things or cooking in the kitchen, which I kind of already do anyways. I'm Italian, and so we're a bit chaotic when we cook, and so it's not really going to impact how I use this space. And honestly, being able to slide something out of the way and fully access this space is better for me than having something intersect. And so this ended up being kind of a frustrating moment, but I wanted to provide you guys some context because at the end of this, you're going to see that the door doesn't fully close, but this ended up being because of the circumstances specific to my space and the fact that there is a pretty significant slope due to the settling of the house. This is a century home, and so significant settling is pretty natural in the New England area. You doing this in your space, you probably won't run into something like this, because having both the significant settling and the oversized fridge and the door placement the way it's done are pretty unique situations, each in their own right, and having all three of them making this complicated is probably something you won't come across. And so I encourage you to do the barn door thing. It's awesome. It, aside from figuring this thing out, was actually a pretty reasonable install, and you probably won't have the same issues that I did. This is the sort of thing where you just follow whatever the manufacturer's instructions say, and so we're gonna get the rail hung.
Fuck yes.
So I am here with Mike and Molly, some of my besties, and we are gonna get the coat of paint on this door and get it cleaned up and ready to be a beautiful feature in the kitchen. So even though this door was probably the biggest hassle humanly possible, it is finally installed, and I am very excited. I think it looks really beautiful, and I love that this is a reuse project. Somebody was getting rid of a bunch of doors, and this door matches another door in this unit, and so I sent the link to my landlord and was like, hey, you should pick this up instead of buying a brand new door. And it's always a good thing. Check out what's going on locally in your thrift shops, on your various online marketplaces, and see if you can pick things up secondhand and give them new life, because this is just a really beautiful door, and if you were to buy this new, it would be so expensive. So I absolutely love it, and I think this is a much better solution for the space. Again, it isn't going to close all the way because the fridge is in the way, but this, I think, is a much better solution for me, and so I am very happy with this. I did also do a couple small upgrades that's going to make this a lot more useful for myself. I added these great little broom holders, and this is just going to make sure that the brooms are not constantly on the floor, and it makes cleaning this space much easier for me, and I really love this. It was such a simple solution, and I will make sure to link all these products down below for you guys. I also made sure to put in a motion and light censored light in here, so that way when it's later on in the evening, the light will come on and make this space much more usable for me. And I also added an extension cord. There's an outlet next to the fridge, and I basically took the extension cord and wrapped it around all the way to here, so that way I could plug my vacuum in the pantry and leave it in here, so it's out of sight, out of mind. And so I'm really excited about all these small little upgrades. But now it's time for the best part, which is redesigning this door and making it a beautiful feature in this room. So I am always really inspired by stained glass windows. I think they're so insanely beautiful. And if you've watched several of the videos on my channel, you will notice that this is a theme. I love the architecture of cathedrals and any space that utilizes these types of windows. And I was recently very inspired by the window in Ophelia Hall in the Wednesday series. It's just such a beautiful window, and it has that amazing goth aesthetic. And I grew up on the Addams Family. I absolutely loved it. I was obsessed with Wednesday, and I would be lying if I pretended like her aesthetic didn't really impact and leave an impression on me, and has definitely been something that I've brought into my personal aesthetic. Essentially what I'm going to be doing is I created a design inspired by the Ophelia Hall window, and I brought it into the Cricut software, and I'm going to use my Cricut to cut out all of the lines of the window, which in traditional stained glass is the leading portion of the window. and I'm going to be putting that onto window cling, which is a super easy product. I have a bunch of it left over from when I did the window cling in my current apartment. I like it because it's a privacy film, and so it's going to make it so I can't see into the pantry, which I like. I like not having pantry items visible. I find it really distracting, and it's a really interesting material because this particular stuff has a bit of a rainbow effect, and the vinyl I chose is also an opalescent sort of aesthetic, and I think it's gonna be a really amazing feature here, and I think it's gonna make this a really fun, different little moment in this space. And the great thing is it's all going to be put on top of this window cling, so when I move out, I can just pull the window cling off, and so I am going to get to making this door a beautiful moment in this space. Window cling is a super easy material to use. You just wet down the window and press the film onto it and it sticks to it. And so I really think this is an awesome project, and I do recognize the privilege in that not everybody could afford a robot like a Cricut, but I will say you don't actually need one to do this project. You could totally just sketch on the back of the vinyl that you want to use and then cut it out either with scissors or with an X-Acto. And so I think this is a really accessible project, and I encourage you to try it out. Y'all, I can't even with how good this looks. Like, who is she? This was such an insanely easy DIY. If ever I could recommend a super easy project that you should try, this is it. This has drastically changed the look of the space. I love that it blocks all the busyness of my pantry, and it is so unique and feels so special, and I absolutely love this. So I would be so excited to see what you guys do. So if you decide to try it out, comment below, because I would love to see all the cool things that you guys are making too. The last little bit is going to be adding the doorknob hardware, and then we get to enjoy the gorgeous final result of this chaotic pantry process. This project was so chaotic and difficult, but I am so pleased with the final results. This is something that was actually super simple to do, and I think it really makes a huge difference in the space. And so I think this is something that almost anybody could do. And the DIY portion of the window cling, I highly recommend. It was so fun and it looks so amazing. I think this is one of those interesting moments where sometimes when you watch shows that do big projects in DIY, they don't show you the downs of the ups and downs of projects. And I think this is really remiss because it makes people feel like they can't take things on because they see things on TV and it looks like everything goes well, and projects almost never go perfectly the whole way. We don't strive for perfection here. And I think it's always funny because people question why I always share when things get messed up. And one, we're all supportive besties here, and so I think it's okay to share with everybody when things go right. And two, it's a learning experience. I always want to be learning, and I want other people who are watching this can see what I've learned and how I problem solved through something. And I think that's much more useful than pretending like everything went perfectly when it didn't. Thank you so much for coming along on this project with me. I know it was chaotic and a little bit different, but I hope you all learned as much as I did through this chaotic process. If you enjoyed yourself, I would love it if you would consider subscribing and click the notification bell, and you will get notified every time we post new content on the channel. We do post every other Saturday, and next week I'm going to be posting the Organize With Me portion of this video. And so if you want to see all the fun acrylic container ASMR type content, check that out and make sure to subscribe. And if you want to support the channel, consider checking out our Patreon. We do an after show for every single project called the Mortem, where I get to go into more detail about things that weren't able to make it in the edit. It's a great way to share awesome content with you guys, and it also really helps to support the channel. Thank you all so much for tuning in. As always, be creative, live fully, and memento mori.